Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dan, the voice behind ThatKaitoDan, and with our return to the wacky world of RWBY Chibi for Season 3 being only days away, how about we reflect on our second helping of RWBY Chibi goodness. We've had some new faces, a ton of laughs, and even a few surprises with the insanity of the Chibiverse, and since I did the same for Season 1, you should click the card in the top right by the way to watch that video, it's good, I promise, I'm gonna rank my 10 favourite scenes out of the whole of Season 2. But before we start, a few notes. First, this is just my personal list of my favourites. It's not me listing the best of the best, the cream of the crop, the undisputed top 10. It's just my personal ranking of the skits that left the biggest impact on me. As such, my list will likely be very different to yours. But you're more than welcome to share your picks in the comments down below. Also, since I'll need to give my reasons as for why I picked these entries, I'm going to be spoiling their contents as well as anything related to the main series that they're tied to, so be aware that spoilers are ahead. Without further ado, let's go over my top 10 favourite RWBY Chibi Season 2 skits. Number 10. Magic Show from Episode 3. As I said earlier, a new season meant that some folks would be making their spin-off debut, and in my opinion, one of the better introductions was the skit involving everyone's favourite rabbit girl, Velvet. I've got a very big soft spot for the shy cutie Faunus, and I'm not alone in that. The fact she's even a featured character to begin with is thanks to the massive surge of fan love that she gained even only being serving as a background character early on. Now she's popped up more frequently in the show, has her own team, and has one of the coolest weapons in the show. So naturally, once she popped out of Jean's hat during his magic off with RWBY, I was one of many who was slightly happy at the sight. And by slightly, I mean a lot if you couldn't tell from my reaction video. Talk about a fitting way to introduce a character. Though that's not to say the skit itself was good just because of Velvet showing up and giving Jean one hell of an ear tug because of all the time that he was pulling on her ears. This piece was actually already a good laugh to begin with, thanks to the two magicians bickering and having a good old time. Especially with Ruby's sick burn that Jean doesn't need help to look bad. The poor guy had a very rough time in this skit. While Velvet's introduction is the major selling point for the skit's positives, and thus why it's only at number 10, the comedic timing and the subversion was a very welcome treat. Though imagine if the crewbie went with their original plans and had Velvet be a male elephant Faunus. I doubt there's enough trunk space in that hat. Number 9. A Slip Through Time and Space Part 2 from Episode 23. If there's one character who defines the comedy side of RWBY the most, it's definitely Nora. Even before Chibi was a thing, she's been the center of a ton of laughs. She was in a lot of the best skits as well of Season 1, and the first version of this caffeinated craziness even made it into the top 3 of my last list. So it comes as no surprise that the second time around made it onto this list as well. After some fun with trying to stop Nora going off the deep end once again, we got another fourth wall buster, only this time in a vastly different style. Part 1 gave us character swaps in Samantha Island IRL, but in Part 2, it was Nora who made the jump into our world in bite-sized figure form. Humor aside, I definitely have to applaud the stop motion work in this skit. It's not an easy animation method to make, but it was definitely worth it for the laughs that it offered, seeing the Rooster Teeth merch come to life. And yes, while it was basically a quick advertisement for the RT store and the tons of RWBY merch that this poor bugger still hasn't got his mitts on, it was delivered in a way that still worked for the episode, with the crewbie also once again taking the mickey out of themselves and the rather unique Pyrrha plushie, which is legit now called the Great One in the RT store. Said it before, and I will again, if you can't laugh at yourself, who can you laugh at? Top it off with some Matrix references and a cameo from Barbara, and you got a skit that sold well in more ways than one. Number 8. Late for Class from Episode 7. Sometimes you can make a great skit out of even the most common of tropes. If you can nail the directing, the visuals, and use the right characters, you can make that trope still have its laughs. And boy did this one do just that for the classic sneaking into class late gimmick. RWBY as the hapless late student trying and failing over and over again to get into class works just as well as Oobleck does at being the strict, regimented teacher who's too smart to get tricked. The two's charisma work off each other perfectly, and the various ways that RWBY tries to sneak in have the right escalation factor up to the climax that just had me in stitches, as shown with RWBY's expressions, as the more times she failed, the wilder she looked. While Oobleck is a tad more restrained than in the main show, with RWBY getting in more of the quirky laughs, Joel's measured voice helps add a touch of confidence to every time the little red gets busted with ease, no matter how eccentric her efforts become. And of course, Lindsay is on point too, even with her so bad it's good Russian accent. It was completely silly, but her voice adds a touch of adorable charm to it. And at the end, she also delivered probably the closest we'll ever get to hearing RWBY swear. A solid end to an enjoyable bit of troublemaking. Number 7. Surprise Parties from episode 13. Remember what I said about getting laughs out of a basic premise if you nail all the right elements? Well, I think this skit is the purest and strongest example of that accomplishment. What's the scenario? RWBY is banned at surprise parties. Here's some examples why. What follows is some of the best timed gags in the season's run with every fumble. Punchlines are given just the right amount of hang time to let you absorb the joke and laugh without ruining the pace of the skit as a whole, like Blake's flatly delivered mention of silence being her preferred kind of fun, or Weiss undercutting the Catgirl's soft dismissal with a blunt put down instead. My favourites though definitely come in the last bit with Port's surprise. The added effect of having the music completely stop for the "you're old" gag just adds that extra punch with the low blow to poor Peter, and it just keeps going with RWBY's surprise shout, and especially with Neptune's sudden shocking attempt at reviving the teacher. It's a dark bit of comedy to end off the skit with, but it paced it brilliantly to end on a positive note for the shenanigans. Also, I especially loved the little background comedy with Nora. She was nom-nom-nomming that cake like a beast in the first cutaway gag, but did you notice that during Yang's segment, Nora was too laser focused on getting at that grim cake to even say surprise? It's the little things like that which, even on a second watch, can make you laugh just as hard as you did the first time, and thus why it's no surprise to see this scene make it into the top 10. Number 6. Evil Genius from episode 12. Ah, Roman and Neo, how we miss you both. While one of you is currently Grimchow, and the other is possibly still somewhere in the sky doing her best Mary Poppins impression, these two were a true delight in the early days of RWBY, and that carried on into the Chibi world with major success. They're like the Draken and Shigo of RWBY Chibi, the Saturday morning cartoon baddies that are just too entertaining to hate. One ego-fueled criminal mastermind and his straight-laced yet still colourful muscle. They play off each other so damn well, and this skit showed that in spades, mixing up Roman's hamminess with Neo's visual humour to make simple comedy magic. You got Roman going full-on supervillain with his harebrained schemes constantly blowing up in his face, which builds up to an ironic and silly payoff, with Roman breaking down every time, and Neo doing her best to cheer him up, though not without some snark on the side. Gray, by the way, is the life of the party with his performance. He sounds like he's having a right blast recording for this skit, let alone for his other appearances, which makes it all the more sad that Roman's no longer around in the canon show. But hey, at least we always got you, Chibi Roman, even if you do have a very bad habit of dying a lot in your appearances. A prime example of two characters stealing the show with their perfect chemistry, and some good old chuckles at their expense. Number 5. Evil Class from episode 7. This time we didn't just get more laughs from Roman and Neo, but we also had the rest of Teen Crime too, as Cinder is trying her best to teach her allies about the perfect Frosty trap. Emphasis on the word trying. Considering a lot of these villains' schemes went off so well in canon, it's good to see Chibi allowing for some silly mistakes with these lot, especially with the group generally being complete goofs and getting under each other's skin. The varying personalities makes for very good comedy between each character's distinct quirks, like Mercury's childish quips and Neo's continued silent sign-based comedy. Even more so was Cinder being portrayed as her own spin on the evil maniacal villain surrounded by complete total idiots, like many a cartoon baddie before her. She just couldn't deal with such buffoonery, and it's an entertaining sight to watch. Plus, for those who notice the little hidden gags like I do, the chalkboard at the back hides some very good treats, such as Nora being baited by a classic box trap, ZWBY being crossed out, perhaps after foiling their previous plan in Season 1, and oh, that is just too deep a cut, RWBY. At least we got the surprising reveal of Port at the end to make up for that small kick to the feels. Though I have to wonder what happened that left him completely covered in cake as well. I blame that one on RWBY's surprise parties. Anyway, it's an entertaining mixture of combustible elements, even literally at some point. Some top-drawer comedic timing, the golden acting, and the right amount of cheesy yet effective jokes that made this one a bigger blast than its final moments, and that's why it makes it into the top 5 of this list. Number 4. Nurse Nora from episode 15. A mate of mine, when he first saw the models for Chibi, said that they looked kinda freaky, especially in the right context. I myself didn't see it at the time, but oh boy do I now see some of that after this skit. Nora and Ren have been two of the biggest bright spots in the Chibi world, thanks to Nora's bubbly nature and Ren being the perfect straight man to play off her, while getting in some of his own laughs, with their will they won't they relationship being obviously the biggest theme for most of their skits. So what happens when you take these two and that relationship and put them in a parody of misery? Complete creepy craziness. There are some genuine laughs, mind you, with Nora's attempts at nursing the injured Ren, thanks in large part to Samantha Island doing some fantastic work twisting Nora's natural loving kindness into something right out of Mirai Nikki. Neef also does really well performing some genuine fear, and who can blame him, though the strongest praise has to go to the animation team, who created this nerve-wracking scene that went from dark bit of tense laughs to full-on nightmare fuel. Backed by a chilling music box remix of Boob for that added touch of freakiness, and a textbook twisted headspin that would make the Exorcist blush. And this is a wonderfully wicked spin on a classic thriller moment. Just keep Nora away from me, please. Number 3. Super Besties from episode 6. And you thought Nurse Nora was scary. RWBY's early show attempts to be best buds with Weiss was a lot of fun in its own cute yet awkward way. Watching the two's roller coaster of a friendship grow and develop into what it is now has been a worthwhile watch. But take that slow burning bond and add in a pinch of some very unnerving brainwashing, and boy does it become something funny in the most unnatural sense. Once again thanks to some outstanding voice work and directive touches. It's not just RWBY trying to brainwash Weiss into becoming bestest buddies, but doing so while she's sleeping, and in such a hauntingly weird way that it's oddly engrossing to watch. All the manipulative facial expressions, Lindsay's pleasant yet bone-chilling scheming tone, the moonlit setting, and even a blast of evil thunder and eyes in the dark, it's just simply spooky and bizarre, and yet I cannot help but laugh at what I'm watching. The fact that it is so childish at least does help the grim trickery come off as playful rather than truly malicious. What also helps is the scene afterwards, with the Ice Queen's expression saying 1,000 words about the situation that she's found herself in, and Kara nailed it with some extra hilarious reactions. You can just picture the inside of Weiss's head being nothing but surprised screams. And she's not the only one caught up in RWBY's web, which again does help this skit come off as lighthearted madness rather than mean-spirited. And for that, I definitely gotta praise it. The visuals, the acting, the tone, it all came together to leave quite the impression. Kinda like RWBY's mind games. And the final joke was a cheeky little finale to a skit that didn't need to trick me into making it my bronze medal winner for this season. Number 2, Dodgeball from episode 1. One of the most hyped new characters for this season was undoubtedly Penny. Not only is she a major fan favorite and someone whose innocent and socially broken nature would fit perfectly with the comedy spin-off, but it also would be the first time seeing Penny since she, fell apart. Oh come on, I had to make light of that moment somehow. Anyway, we were all looking forward to seeing the Robo Girl's return, so it's great to say that her debut skit was a major success. Working amazingly with the previously mentioned social flaws that Miss Polendina has, the poor girl's botched attempts at fitting in with the others on the dodgeball battlefield was a massive laugh riot from start to finish, thanks to several elements. Penny herself is just so adorably kooky that you can't help but enjoy seeing her fail hardcore at blending in. Major props as well to Taylor Pelter McNee, who has some adorable voice work for sure. And this skit is the first of many excellent scenes over the course of the season to take a comedic spin on all the ways that Penny just can't help but inadvertently tease those around her that there's more to her than meets the eye, even if RWBY tries her best to hide it. Also, 2 of the series' best use of blink and you'll miss it jokes are in this one skit. That being Zwei backing away from Penny's thumbs up nervously, and then later on with RWBY joining in on the screams once the cat's out of the bag, acting like this was a complete shock to her as well. Penny's premiere performance was a joy to behold, from the presentation to the silly interactions to the outstanding voice work. There was plenty of laughs to be found. A great way to welcome back everyone's favourite non-meat person. Here's hoping her possible main show return is just as pleasing as this was. Now before I reveal my favourite skit of the season, here are a few honourable mentions. Cool Uncle and Cool Dad from episode 10. I put these 2 together since they carried the same narrative, and while they were both funny in their own right, this was actually quite adorable too, with the sisters comforting Ty at the end. The Mystery Bunch from episode 17. RWBY pulled a Johnny Bravo and parodied Scooby-Doo, and it was damn good. Parent-Teacher Conference from episode 13. More of Ty and Crow again, though what it lacked in feels, it definitely made up for in married coupled squabble laughter and some excellent acting from Bernie and Vic. Inner Lives of BEOWOLVES from episode 14. I never knew I needed a chibi skit based on Talking Grim until we got it. Also, damn it Floyd! Computer Virus from episode 17. Largely because of the Easter eggs in the viruses. We got the revamped Chibi achievement, a new Neo ice cream, a shout out to the Nuts and Dolts ship, and even Destiny jars made by Cinder. Wow, that is kinda dark. Movie Night from episode 11. So many awesome movie parodies. Also, where's a full song featuring Velvet? I'd listen to that. Battle of the Bands from episode 22. The perfect conclusion to the season's overarching band theme with some marvelous musical mayhem. And finally, the Penny reveal trailer. This would have been my number 10, but since it was technically a trailer, I decided to rule it out. Still, it was a very nice surprise reveal for Penny, and a funny one at that, so consider it my number 11 favourite. And now my number 1 favourite skit from RWBY Chibi Season 2 is... Director OZPN from episode 1. What is it with me liking the first skit of the season so much? Rooster Teeth, you seriously need to stop hitting a home run right out of the gate, at least in my opinion. For the second Chibi countdown in a row, the initial skit is my personal favourite, and I can't help it when it's this good. Not only was the intro fake out a nice change of pace to kick off the season with, not only did it have Chibi OZPN at last, but the skit also called out a lot of the glaring details of Cinder's scheming going right underneath the headmaster's nose, and it was glorious, since I'm sure many of us were a tad frustrated with him at several points in the main show. Even so, seeing the director, in this instance, miss the clues of sabotage so clearly was a brilliant spin on many of the fandom's comments during the third volume's dramatic moments. Seeing all the trickery from the villains go right over OZPN's head and poor Team RWBY suffering as a result was simply perfect. If there's one thing I always respect about the RWBY, it's their willingness to take a joke at themselves and absorb what the fandom is saying. So using that in this picture perfect way to bring back the silly spin-off with a bang was pure genius, as well as a perfect summary of what we can actually find in RWBY Chibi as a whole. Fourth wall breaks, meta humor up the wazoo, and character traits amped up for extra gag potential and laughs aplenty. Yes, it's once again ended up with me liking the very first skit for the second time in a row, but I'm more than okay with that if the skit itself was deserving of that ranking, and there's no argument saying that this skit does not deserve that position. Guess we'll have to wait and see if the third season will break the trend. And that's my list, but how does it compare to yours? Whether any you agree with, and what do you want to see in season 3? Let me know in the comments down below, and while you're at it, hit the subscribe and bell buttons to make sure you get every new video from me as they drop, and follow me on Twitter for all things RWBY, future content from yours truly, and more. Until next time, have a good day or good night, and peace out.